So, sorry about my face. My acne breakouts happen at the worst times. Also, sorry if my throat's a little sticky. I made myself a pot of mac and cheese. I was craving some mac and cheese. Chapter 10, and Some That Should Be. Some stories are so vague that a listener may feel they're doing their best to have a ghost, but some houses are so atmospheric or steeped in significant history or in tragedy that people say if it's not haunted, it should be. From these sources may come stories as memorable as the most eerie to those about seemingly genuine haunts. Here are some examples. The Gentle Spirit of Salem. Dare to whisper about the bizarre incidents this Halloween. Myrtle, dressed in her sunbonnet, tending to the flowers which grew so well for her. She was a sweet gentlewoman who deserves to be remembered. This tribute, created by Renee J. Rapper for the Salem News in October 1990, concludes a story that also contains a description of Myrtle Henderson, found on August 27, 1963, in one of her outbuildings, wrapped in bedsheets and oilcloth and sprinkled with quicklime, identifiable only by her wedding band. Miss Henderson, highly respected by her neighbors, had lived for decades in a historic Dent County house. Built in 1841 by David Henderson, no relation. The house saw the beginnings of Salem. Henderson gave the town its name. In this house, Myrtle had lost one son as a small child and had reared at least one other, Vernon, who was living with her at the time of her death. He noted the event on October 19, 1962, by writing on the kitchen calendar, "Sad day." At first, naturally, Vernon was suspected of having killed his mother, who was in her 80s and in failing health, but the doctor who had visited her in September and previously said he never saw any trace of neglect or abuse, and added that nothing in Myrtle's manner indicated that she feared Vernon. Neighbors said he kept the place clean and waited on his mother kindly. All understood why he had impersonated Myrtle for almost a year, wearing her sunbonnet and long dresses to tend the flowers and go to the mailbox. They knew why he had continued having her prescriptions filled. He was afraid her death would be discovered and he'd have to go back to the penitentiary in Kansas. Because his mother needed his help, he'd been given an early release from a term earned by shooting and wounding his estranged wife. He'd been placed in Myrtle's custody, so it would have been to his advantage for her to live forever. This reasoning apparently prevented his being tried for murder. If Vernon returned to prison, the story doesn't say so, and it doesn't say how his mother's body happened to be found. It's not surprising, of course, that people of the area considered the Henderson farm haunted. Confederate Hill. Some rather wispy stories do exist about this lovely antebellum mansion. Oh, I watched that movie Antebellum not too terribly long ago. I watched it this weekend. It's a weird movie. One of the few still left in Columbia, and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It's said that from a distance only gray-clad soldiers have been seen moving around the grounds, as have apparent slaves going about their task. There is speculation about the builder, David Guitar, and cellars or tunnels under his home as a hospital for Southern soldiers, smuggled to him from engagements in Missouri. However, to general knowledge, at least no great tragedy took place at Confederate Hill. Rather, an exceptional act of brotherly love was demonstrated there. As the Civil War began to become reality, Odin Guitar wanted Missouri to remain neutral. When that proved impossible, he went with the Union, though his brother David's sympathy was passionately for the South. Both became officers. Odin, a general in the Union forces. He distinguished himself by stopping Sterling Price's planned invasion of Missouri, and so had influence when Union forces were stationed in Boone County. He was able to give orders that his brother's house should not be touched. Despite this, we're told the two were estranged for the rest of their lives, not even speaking. Though both lived in Columbia, David reared a family of 10 in the house his brother had secured for him. Odin became an important community leader and served 2 terms in state legislature. Confederate Hill was most recently occupied and cared for as a home for Harvey and Miriam McCaleb. After 4 decades of decades of residence. Miss McCaleb died near there in an automobile accident in 1997 when she was 86 years old. As this book was... keeps telling me I need to update something. And every time I click on it, it doesn't let me update it. When she was 86 years old. As this book was written, Confederate Hill and the 26 acres remaining from its original 862 were for sale again after a few years' respite from the possibility of being subdivided. Plans had not worked out to make it an event site, a place where weddings, receptions, reunions, business conferences, and such could be held. Certainly Confederate Hill would have provided a beautiful setting, and the rumors of it being haunted would have enhanced it for many people. River Scene. Another beautiful Missouri house is a 132-year-old river scene, survivor of the Great Flood of 1993 and many lesser ones. Try as they will, people cannot find anything unearthly about this mansion. At New Franklin across from Boonville, except to say that it has definite aura of other times and other worlds. Some feel its flood survivals are a bit uncanny. River Scene was built in 1864 to 69 by a riverboat captain named Joseph Kinney, who wanted to be able to step ashore from his boat to his home. He declared that the river would never enter the ground floor. Kinney had lived through the flood of 1844 when the Missouri River crested at 33 feet. He reasoned that such an extreme event was hardly likely to be surpassed, so built River Scene accordingly. In the 93 flood crested at 37.1 feet and put a great deal of muddy water into River Scene. Though considerable cosmetic damage resulted, the building stood firm, a tribute to its creator. River Scene almost acquired a ghost that summer, when Wayne Lammers, a Boonville man much attached to the house, spent more than 8 hours in a nearby tree while flood waters roared past him at 35 miles per hour. He had come out to videotape the flood and wanted to see how River Scene fared because he had helped with the earlier renovations. Due to a mishap with his boat, Lammers found himself and his camera afloat. He took refuge in a tree where he waited for rescue. Lammers said that even under those circumstances, standing in water up to its downstairs windows and nobody knowing how much higher the flood might go, River Scene was serenely beautiful. National television later aired his film and other footage made by River Scene's present owners, Rod and Jody Lenz. The nearest thing to a ghost story told about River Scene is that there was a time when thousands of flies unaccountably hatched in one of its upstairs rooms, while none were seen elsewhere in the house. The Baker's House. In Montgomery County near Danville stands a house that is almost unchanged from the way it looked during the Civil War. The history of this place should give rise to a spirit or two. The infamous Bloody Bill Anderson was said to have visited there, and so to dramatize the house on special occasions, a reenactor rides a horse through the straight front to back hall. This is something Southern cavalrymen seemed prone to do, either as an ultimate insult to enemies or as a way of legally greeting their own families when fighting brought them near home, but they were not supposed to leave their unit. A man could honestly say that he never got off his horse, even though he had visited his parents or wife, and perhaps received some home-cooked food to take away with him. Stories about the Baker House involved threats and attempts to burn it, and one story mentioned a mounted soldier snatching up an infant or small child and simply carrying and simulated carrying it off, but leaving it safely in the yard. Owners Marianne and Noel Croson have nothing unusual to tell about the house from their own experience, but during restoration, a workman told them that while eating his lunch in the yard, he looked up and saw a woman watching him from an upstairs window. He went to tell her it was unsafe to be in the house while construction was going on, but he could find nobody. He afterwards refused to be in the house alone. Miss Croson's research gives some validation to the idea that a family member could have been stationed in an upstairs window to watch for intruders in the post-war era of lawlessness. The matriarch of the family had her bed brought downstairs and situated so she could see both front and back doors. The episode starring Anderson seems to have gone more or less like this. He brought his guerrilla band to the Baker's house, hoping to kill its owner, a Union supporter. Baker was not there, so the outlaws contented themselves with trashing the woman's bedroom and possessions, symbolic rape, Miss Crowson says, and setting fire to Miss Baker's mattress. Soon after they rode out, one young man returned alone and put out the fire. He said to have first carried an infant into the yard and put it down at a safe distance from the smoke-filled house. Miss Crowson speculates that the boy belonged to a local family that had benefited from the kindness of Mr. Baker, reputed to have been a generous person who helped many people in his neighborhood. In any case, if the story is true, it means that one young man, following his better impulse, had spared a house that today is historic. Miss Carmen Harvey of Montgomery City relates a strange little experience in the Baker's house. During tour with Miss Crowson, while they had paused in one of the bedrooms, both heard an odd, fairly loud squeaking. Miss Harvey said she felt drawn to a mirror sitting on a rotatable stand on a dresser. When she moved the mirror slightly, both heard the squeaking sound again. The mirror was much too heavy to have been moved by a current of air caused by an opening of a door somewhere else. The floor was too solid for the footfalls to have caused vibration in the furniture the mirror stood on. She told me it's never happened before, Miss Harvey said, and she's taken many, many people through the house on tours. The Baker's house is open to the public. And there are numbers to call about the schedules, but I'll let you look those up yourself. I'm sure they're no longer accurate. Alright, and that's the end of chapter 10.